Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Professor Ming's Strategic Insights. Last week, we talked about Japan's new Prime Minister Takaichi's remarks about Taiwan's contingency and how her remarks brought about the diplomatic disputes between Tokyo and Beijing. And just when we imagined that the whole dispute would be over very soon, but to our surprise, it seems that Beijing does not want to let it go. They escalate the whole thing and increase pressure upon Japan diplomatically, economically, and even militarily. The question is, why is Beijing so furious about the whole thing? Is it really because Takaichi said the wrong thing? After scrutinizing what Takaichi has said, we noticed that her remarks has three premises, or three ifs, actually three big ifs. The first if goes like this. If Communist China launches a naval blockade, she didn't mention whom, whether it could be Taiwan and it could be Japan. If Communist China launches a naval blockade with warships, that's first if. The second if is if the United States comes to the rescue and tries to break the blockade. That's the second if. The third if is if at this moment Communist China uses some kind of military forces against the United States. That's the third if. Then Japan has to make some preparation in advance. So her wording was kind of careful, and that's reasonable. If you look at the whole thing, there are three big ifs, and the most important thing is if the first if does not come true, namely if China does not launch a naval blockade, whether against Taiwan or Japan, what follows will not happen. That's for sure. So there's a big if comes before everything. Then the next question is, so what are the true motives for Beijing to act so furiously? We briefly touched upon this question last week, so we have to elaborate on this week. As I see it, there are three considerations. The first one is, of course, external considerations. The second one is a consideration against Taiwan. Third one, surprisingly or not surprisingly, domestic considerations. First of all, what are the external considerations? As we mentioned before last week, in Beijing's eyes, Takaichi is a Japanese prime minister with an anti-China stance. And they want to deflate her confidence. That's first thing comes first. And secondly, when Takaichi said that, that means Japan may intervene. It's more than might intervene. Japan may intervene in a military conflict surrounding Taiwan or Taiwan Strait. And that's something that Beijing wants to deter. They want to deter Japan from intervening into Taiwan, a second consideration. And thirdly, Takaichi's remarks seems to imply that, that Japan may join hands with the United States to intervene into Taiwan's situation. It's a big headache for Beijing to deal with. And there's more to it. If you follow our program closely, you'll notice that we brought this up before. The G7 countries, the EU countries, and even the NATO members, they pay much attention to what's going on surrounding Taiwan and Taiwan Strait. They express their concerns about Taiwan's security and the safety of the Taiwan Strait, not only expressing their concerns verbally, they also take actions. We mentioned this before. Countries like the UK, France, Germany, Italy, Canada, and even Australia, they send their warships to the Taiwan area. Some pass through the Taiwan Strait, and some navigate along Taiwan's east coast, namely the west side of the Pacific Ocean. Anyway, it's in this area. Not only they navigate in this passage, they also conduct military exercise, naval exercise in nearby waters. The UK even stations or bases their warships in the Asia-Pacific region. One in Singapore and one in Japan. And that's gonna be here for a long time. And all these are headaches for Beijing. So Beijing's very much worried about this Takaichi's remarks. They're afraid that Takaichi's remarks will bring about a domino effect. Namely, other countries will follow suit. If Japan intervenes, then other countries might follow suit. So that's something that Beijing wants to deter. Try to intimidate them from thinking about it, to say the least. There's a Chinese saying describing this kind of situation. It goes like to kill the chicken to scare a monkey. So that's basically what it is. The second part of the consideration is, of course, about Taiwan. Anyway, Takaichi's remarks was about Taiwan. We mentioned that prior to her becoming the prime minister, she visited Taiwan and met with our president Lai Ching-te and our legislative yuan speaker Han Kuo-yu and foreign minister. So in the eyes of Beijing, again, she's not only a prime minister with an anti-China stance, but also with a pro-Taiwan or even pro-Taiwan independent stance. That something must be deterred or even punished. And the second thing, as we mentioned last week, our Vice President, Bi Kim-shao, visited European Parliament, and delivered the keynote speech to the IPAC, the Interparliamentary Alliance on China. She gave a keynote speech. And then followed by our former president, Ms. Tsai Ing-wen. She also gave a speech to the Freedom Conference in Berlin, Germany. So that means a breakthrough of Taiwan's diplomacy with European countries. So that's something that Beijing wants to deter. Beijing not only wants to deter Taiwan from expanding diplomatically, but also they try to deter European countries from establishing a closer diplomatic ties with Taiwan. And then we saw the PLA's live fire exercises at Yellow Sea, trying to deter Japan, South Korea, and even the American soldiers stationed in these two countries. Of course, they will try to use this opportunity to intimidate Taiwan militarily, not only to show their determination, but also try to exercise some kind of pressure upon Taiwan so that they can create some kind of chaos inside Taiwan. And it does produce some kind of effect. Let's be honest with it. And the third part is basically really mentioned by some commentators, namely their domestic considerations. With worsening economy and worsening deflation, stagnant economic activities, serious unemployment, especially among younger generation, and the lives are much more difficult, and the public or general dissatisfaction is running high, actually higher and higher, and with increasing crime rates and so on and so forth, and not to mention the increasing rate of suicide and indiscriminate killing against anonymous peoples, such as ramming a car into a crowd and killing or injuring the passengers. And the worst cases are against the kindergarten children, boys and girls. And that's really heartbreaking to see things like that. And one more thing that worth mentioning is the purge, political purge. Political purges actually against civilian and military officers and officials, party and government and so on and so forth. So people are so uneasy about the whole thing. Actually, we can say that both officers and officials are, how should we put it? They are pretty much unsettled, and everybody is nervous and feel insecure. They don't know what would happen to them tomorrow, day after, or even today's afternoon. Remember that we mentioned that more than nine three-star generals were purged in one day, and more than about 15 three-star generals were purged in a matter of less than 1 year. So you can feel the anxiety hidden in the heart of these high-ranking officials and officers. So in order to divert their attention from the domestic problems and political purges and the social unrest, creating an external conflict or external contradiction, using their jargons, it's convenient. It comes in handy. And something against Taiwan and against Japan is probably the best choice for Xi Jinping at this moment. So escalation against Japan from the viewpoint of Beijing is totally reasonable. And again, as we said, convenient. Yes, before I forget, there's one more reason. Beijing also wants to use this opportunity to test President Trump, to test President Trump's determination. Didn't Trump tell the Premier Takaichi, I'll give you whatever you want? So actually, in our eyes, President Trump is handling a blank check to Takaichi. So does it really mean that? Will he really give Takaichi whatever she wants? Nuclear submarines or nuclear weapons, long-range missiles, or whatever. So for Beijing, they want to test it. They want to know how far your promise can go and how real your commitment is to Japan, to Japan's defense, or to Japan's security. So what would happen in the future about this matter? Like I said, it's hard to say. Still, I maintain my viewpoint, as I expressed last week. I think for Tokyo, their target or their goal is rather limited. They want to cool down the whole thing. They don't want any escalation. But that's not the case for Beijing. Eventually, they are hoping to weaken Takaichi's political status, or even to get her out of the office, to get rid of her completely. Although it's not easy, it's kind of difficult. But at least using this thing, or using this escalation to divert people's attention, to divert the PLA generals' attention away from their purges and from their political status or political situation, at least it's convenient, like I said. It's good for the moment. But there's one more variable I have to mention. That is the possibility of a meeting, a summit meeting between President Trump and General Secretary Xi Jinping in the coming April next year, April 2026. If they have high hope of this meeting, of this summit meeting between the two leaders, then they'll probably bring an end to this matter as late as February 2026, leaving 2 months' time for the meeting, for the summit meeting. If they do not anticipate too much about this meeting, then Beijing will probably let this escalation between Tokyo and then Beijing escalate to a certain extent, so that they can harvest more, both internationally and domestically. But still, I have to remind you that there is some negative impact or negative effect against Beijing by escalating the matter between the political disputes between Tokyo and Beijing. That is, after this incident, the entire world, at least the leading country of the world, are wary of Beijing, and they show more sympathy toward Japan, and of course toward Taiwan too. They now realize what kind of situation Taiwan has been gone through after so many years. And that's first negative impact it may have on Beijing. The second negative impact is it ironically helped deepen the security ties between the United States and Japan, as indicated by the American ambassador to Japan, Ambassador Glass. And the third negative impact is the whole thing actually brings Taiwan and Japan closer and closer. So they may have calculated it, but that cannot, there's something that they cannot avoid. So for Beijing, there are both advantages and disadvantages for the whole thing, for escalating the disputes between the two countries. But anyway, like I said, there is still one important variable, and that's something that we have to watch very closely in the weeks to come, or in the months to come. Well, that's all I want to share with you today, and I think the whole thing will probably drag on a little bit more longer, and well, anyway, we'll keep you informed. And that's all I want to share with you today, and I hope you like it. So again, let me repeat it. Please subscribe if you haven't done so, and share it with your friends, and do remember to click the icon bell so that you can get a on-time notification. I'll see you next time then. I'll see you next time.